Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Polich, and I'm a sustainability studies student here at Riparian University in Asheville. I'll be graduating in December, and like Keith said, I'm a former Reese fellow. Through that, we worked on building some bike infrastructure here on campus, doing a sustainability analysis of the building, and outreaching to prospective students and for events back when that was an in-person thing. I'm focused particularly on how we can use compelling stories to make change, particularly as we push for energy efficiency in Buncombe County. My interest in our local water quality stems from the fact that I drink it, I shower in it, I use it for cooking, and I swim in our lakes and rivers. I'm very excited to introduce Mitch Woodward, who has been working in environmental education, evaluation, program planning, and implementation for 25 years. He's a real jack of all trades. This work has taken him from Maryland to Pennsylvania to DC, and for the last 13 years, he's been working at the NC Cooperative Extension at NC State. At Extension, Mitch is a specialized agent of watersheds and water quality. He conducts 15 to 20 workshops and events annually, covering topics related to, but not limited to, water quality and residential pollution prevention, stormwater practices, rain gardens, rainwater harvesting, on-site wastewater, and illicit discharge detection and elimination. Fun fact about Mitch, he has installed 50 rain gardens and 12 rainwater harvesting systems. And for anyone interested in his academic loyalties, he did his undergrad studies at the University of Delaware and got an MS from the University of Maryland. Take it away, Mitch.
All right, very good. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me? Good, good. So the sound level is good. For some reason, the video is not working, but you don't need to see me. You can just look at the slides. That'll be even better. So,
Sounds
okay,
great.
very good. Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go through 4 practices today that we call small-scale solutions. And you can kind of see in the photographs at the bottom of this opening slide what we consider small-scale solutions. These are individual properties, maybe several properties. And okay, so we got a video link here. Let me try this. All right, there we go. All right, so now you can see me and the slides. Excellent. Okay, so we'll go through this really quickly. Like I said, I got my graduate degree, University of Maryland, and if anybody's familiar with that Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, it's a good place to be from. And also, it is kind of the nexus of stormwater management, PG County or Prince George's County, right there around that DC area. And of course, it drains to the Chesapeake Bay. That's why stormwater is critical because of all the work that's been done there, and of course at NC State University. So let's dive right into this here. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. All right, so we got some water worries. You can kind of read down through here. We're in one of the fastest growing states in the country. And anytime, of course, we have states growing like it is, we have 20%, 10% to 20% imperviousness in some of these watersheds. Our streams get impacted at about that percentage of imperviousness. Urban stormwater in these urban environments is a #1 source of pollution. Many times. There is a lot of money coming into North Carolina, the Department of Commerce tells us, on water-related recreation. They tell us, and this data is a couple years old, but it's still really relevant. It's probably gone up. Maybe because of COVID, it's gone down, but it's going to go back up. $22 billion a year. So do you think the state of North Carolina is interested in protecting water resources? You betcha. And so you're going to see more stormwater rules. You're going to see more buffer protection initiatives. What else is interesting too is in some of our major cities, Raleigh is a prime example. 50 to 70% of our drinking water is used for irrigation and landscaping during the summer months. So that is a fairly unsustainable number. So they're looking at reusing some of this rainfall, and that's our interest in water reuse, and then also using rainwater harvesting and some of these other practices, these stormwater control measures. Nationally, to give you some perspective, about $2 billion a year is spent annually on stream repair and restoration, and that is going up. We helped to lead a conference. I think one was going to be held this year. That's put on hold. I think it's next year. But if any of you are interested in doing a deep dive on stream repair and stream restoration, stay tuned to what we're doing on that, because I think next year there's going to be a stream restoration conference. I think next year it's in Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken. So check that out. So that's coming, very interesting if you're interested in that type of thing. So watershed education, and Dr. Burchell mentioned repair and maintenance of these practices needs to be done at all levels. And that's what we're a part of. So lots of property problems out there. Erosion and incision of streams. These are in Cary, North Carolina. So do you think there's some impervious areas upstream of these sites? You bet. A lot of erosion, a lot of sediment, tons of sediment moving downhill. And the one question I would ask is, do you think liriope and turf grass does a good job of holding banks stable in these types of environments? They do not. So our emphasis on native deep-rooted plants and perennials especially is something that we're focusing on. So there's some motivation there, right? We have lots of homeowners, lots of high-value property, people moving in. The real estate market has gone crazy, hasn't really even been affected by COVID. And so now we have loss of land. That gets people excited, and that motivates people to change. So that's a good thing. So flooding, of course, that's something that everybody finds disturbing. We get that a lot. You'll notice that on the picture on the right, that house is for sale. You think there's a reason for that. That car is probably on eBay. So there we go. So flooding is a huge issue. That's what people think of when they think of water, along with snakes, which is very unpopular. So again, going back to this imperviousness idea, anytime, and many of you know this, I think intuitively, anytime we have 10 to 15% of our watersheds in imperviousness, okay, in impervious types of materials, we are going to have a stream bank issue, especially. And a lot of that, the stream bank issues, of course, erosion is connected to that. And what's the #1 pollutant in North Carolina? That would be sediment. And that's where it's coming from, this local stream bank erosion. So that's the #1 pollutant in North Carolina. So let's look at a watershed. It's a typical watershed in a established area like Ellerby Creek. Okay, and for those of you that know, Ellerby Creek is kind of the poster child for developed watersheds in the Neuse River Basin. So here we go, just a patch, and you can see on the map where this is, just a section of that watershed. It's 44% impervious, and you recall that anytime we have more than 10%, we start to get stream degrading. So here we are at 40%. You can kind of see where that is. So we're just shy of 50% in rooftops, roads, and parking. There's still about 50% open space, disconnected. It's trees, it's patches of grass, it's bare soil, it's construction sites, but that'll give you an idea of kind of where we are. And you can see where Northgate Mall is and kind of give you an idea where that is. That's just a typical urban watershed in some of our larger cities. And of course, it goes up from there. We have some watersheds that are 90% impervious in Raleigh. So of course, I don't need to tell this group that it is rainy. Here we get somewhere between 45 and 50 inches a year typically across North Carolina, except in that rain shadow out near Brevard and Lake Toxaway where we get twice that. Kind of unusual in that spot. So we get a lot of rain. So it's 40 to 50 inches a year that we need to manage. And that's about, of course, 3 to 4 inches a month. And again, we're one of the fastest growing areas. A little dated here, these numbers, but that continues. I'm told about 270 people move to North Carolina every day. And about 70 of that is coming just to Wake County area because of the employment, and still a nice place to live. So we have a lot of people coming here. So obviously land use equals water quality. We take a look at top of the watershed types of practices that I'll focus on today. Smaller practices like rain gardens, downspout disconnection, innovative water harvesting, stream bank repair, and then bottom of the watershed practices. These will be our large types of reservoirs and things like in the Raleigh area, Falls Lake. Well, we're not building any more of those quickly, or may not build any more of those. So this is taking the focus on our top of the watershed or small scale urban types of practices or individual lot practices. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So pre-development versus post-development hydrology, just to kind of put some numbers on this, focus on those two numbers, pre-development. And of course, this is generalized. It depends on soils and whatnot and rainfalls, but you can kind of take a look that we've got about 5 times the amount of runoff off of a impervious area versus a natural pre-development hydrologic budget. So you can see what we have there. And then also we get less infiltration, of course, in that urbanized type of situation. So that impacts our stream flow as well. So we get really flashy streams. We get a lot of pollution and a lot of water moving off sites in an urbanized environment. And then also, since we don't have a lot of groundwater recharge, we don't have a lot of base flow in these streams. So you'll see these streams dry up completely where they used to run during dry times of the year. And then we just get the flood, of course, with all this imperviousness adding water off the site. So it's kind of a double whammy there, and that's what's affecting our water quality. So let me show you this graphic, spared no expense here. So we have a 1 foot by 1 foot floor tile. And if it rains an inch on that, that's 0.63 gallons. This is a great graphic, by the way, to share with people that really aren't interested, or maybe just have a casual kind of relationship with stormwater or how much runoff occurs from a roof or a parking lot. And so this actually gives a visual of 2 things that people are pretty familiar with. 1 square foot floor tiles and a 30-gallon brute trash can. So if it rains an inch on a square foot, that's 0.63 gallons. If it rains 45 to 50 inches a year on that 1 square foot floor tile, that's 30 gallons a year. And that's how much is running off 1 square foot. So now we tell people, imagine your rooftop, imagine your driveway, imagine, easy for me to say, imagine a 1 acre area. That's a parking lot. And of course, that's about the size of a football field. Back when we used to play football, that's about 27,000 gallons per 1 inch rain that runs off that area. So you can imagine how much that is a year. So this really puts in perspective. So this is a great graphic. And again, spared no expense on that one. And this is another one that captures people's attention. So we have a happy little rain cloud there that is raining on Cape Fear River Basin, totally undeveloped area. So we ask people, so we have flow rate in cubic feet per second on the vertical axis, and we have the time of the storm on the horizontal. So what is that hydrograph going to look like? In other words, the measure of the runoff from that site is going to be pretty low, right? Low and slow, rains, the amount of water running off that site going to the river rises a bit and then settles back down slowly after the rain stops. So this would be a natural type of environment that we would expect. So now, of course, here comes development. We have the big box. We have the 15-acre parking lot. And so now we have more runoff arriving faster. And of course, this makes sense to a lot of people. And you can see how that red line dips down below because, again, the flashiness, the lack of groundwater recharge, aquifer recharge underneath of that impervious area, that's allowing that stream to dry out. And of course, that affects our aquatic macro and micro invertebrates. and then all the animals that feed off that. So the dominoes begin to fall, something like that. So, and we call it small scale solutions. We also call it urban rainscaping. How can individual property owners address this issue? Simply, cheaply, effectively. And so we call this the 3 S's, right? The 3 S's. We want to put in practices that slow the water down, spread it out, and soak it in. So you'll see in the back of me, there we've got an innovative water harvester with a passive drawdown device. So we'll talk a little bit about this. So now this drawdown device, this tank is acting like a rain garden or a bioretention due to this little orifice that we have at the proper elevation in that tank. So we'll talk a little bit about this, but generally this is just giving you an idea of the type of education we do for landowners, property owners, cities and towns that are interested in managing stormwater, but promoting what individual property owners and therein landscapers that can help to manage these practices and make some money doing it. We also have a workshop, and some of you may have taken this, our stormwater practice BMP inspection and maintenance workshop. And that's one of our more popular ones. I think we're going to do that virtually, or maybe since we're in phase 2.5, I think we can have, now in North Carolina, we can have meetings outside where we have sufficient number to hold the workshop. So I think there's plans here going into the fall to hold that workshop. But that's called the Stormwater Control Measure Inspection and Maintenance Workshop. So if you Google that, NC State Inspection and Maintenance Workshop, you'll see that, and we encourage you to go to that because we break down each one of these practices in detail as to how it's installed and what needs to be maintained. So here is our ideal water-wise landscape, right? So you can see, starting at the left, we have rain gardens capturing flow off the rooftop and the driveway, maybe some amended soils that increase infiltration, maybe a rainwater harvester that slowly captures that water and then slowly leaks it down into our rain gardens or across their landscape, amended soil, vegetated swale, and we've conserved the mature vegetation, so that absorbs the water. And then maybe we added some permeable pavement. So the idea here is we tell people if it rains an inch on this property, and the roof and the driveway, we capture that and infiltrate it on site. So this is the idea. This is the idea that we're trying to promote. So here are the 4 practices that I'm going to go through really quickly, give you some photographs of some of the things that we've been doing out here and how we've been educating people and what we've been educating them on. And downspout disconnection, rain gardens, innovative water harvesting, and some stream bank restoration, stream bank repair. So downspout disconnection, this is what we did in Durham. Remember that slide of Ellerby Creek and how we're up near 50% impervious. And that drains right to Falls Lake, drinking water supply for Raleigh and Wake County. So again, we're going to slow it down, spread it out, and soak it in. This is a study that we did years ago where we calculated roof areas of houses in Durham. We put up a little V-notch weir at the end of this, and we have an area of the roof, we have an area of the lawn, and now we know how much water is coming over that V-notch during rainstorms, and we can calculate, using this simple setup, we can calculate infiltration rates. A lot of these houses in this area of Durham were piping their downspouts directly to the street. There's a number of reasons why people do that. The biggest one is because the landscapers and the people maintaining their lawns love it, because in clay soils, nothing ruins your day like getting your lawnmower stuck in the lawn and now it's all rutted up. People do this just simply to dry out the lawn and get the water off of there so they can maintain their landscape. The thing is, now we have a tremendous amount of water flowing into Ellerby Creek and then again to Falls Lake. So we're trying to just disconnect downspouts. Is this an expensive practice? No, it doesn't cost a thing. You just disconnect the downspout from the pipe going to the street, put it in the lawn, and I'll show you some numbers here that we have. So again, here's another site, a little bit larger, little bit larger roof area, kind of your typical unkept lawn that's in that area. It doesn't have to be perfectly manicured, bent grass or Bermuda like you'd see on a golf course. It can be weeds. We call this, it passes the 20-yard test right from the street. You look at it from 20 yards away, it looks good, it's green. So that's okay, that'll work. So we ask ourselves, and we ask our homeowners, is this a good thing? Certainly, it's a good thing. I mean, take a look at this. Is that a good thing? Sure, it comes off the roof, it goes across the grass, slows it down, spreads it out, have a long path here with this grass swale that leads down to a detention pond. And in your typical 1-inch rain, very little, if any, rainfall on this site in Durham makes it to the pond. It soaks in. And so this is a great practice. And you can mow it. Okay, people like that. An alternative here would be to maybe vegetate this with some natives that like wet feet once in a while. And now we have a linear vegetated bioswale. Okay, and but they like to mow the grass up there, so this is what they got. So there's our stormwater practice and all of its glory. So connected downspouts, we want to get rid of these, we want to disconnect those, and we want to put it into a situation like this. We don't want these going to the street. So again, we look at these are opportunities. What about this? We have an impervious area, of course, to the right. It's raining hard. It's coming across our walkway. It's going down through the lawn, providing some infiltration, slowing it down. It's nice and vegetated. We're not getting a lot of soil down there. And just on the other side of this lawn is a tributary to the Neuse. So this is good. We've done the best we can here, but this is working. And this area right here kind of provides a kind of a level spreader type of an effect where the water runs, goes down along this liriope, and then heads across the grass. So a couple practices there. This is what we want to try to avoid, that 4-inch PVC pipe, and there are hundreds of thousands of miles of this in Durham and Wake counties. This is what we want to try to avoid. We want to give the water an opportunity to soak in. So, it can be as simple as protecting and maintaining a natural, mature, vegetated area when you construct the house. Here on the right-hand side, it's hard to see, but through those trees, there is a large house. And here is a patch of trees in the front yard that they've protected. And it's serving to infiltrate all that water there. And there's a drop inlet right here. So if the water gets up too high here or too long, it'll drain in. So again, it's just another way of thinking about how we build. And conservation developments, low impact developments, this is something that's probably going to take a generation to get into people's heads. There are developers and contractors that want to mow these mature trees down, put the house where they want it. Well, here we've worked with the landscaping, and it's really not any more difficult than that. So what type of volume reductions can we get? Well, there on the right-hand side, you can see. It's down the right-hand side, and again, very easy, very cheap. We were getting up to 99% reductions here. So again, that's a pretty cool practice. Okay, moving on to residential water harvesting. So this is a practice that can be as effective as a rain garden or a bioretention in terms of knocking peak flow off of a rooftop during a rainstorm, collecting it, using it for irrigation, or maybe not even using it for irrigation at all, drawing that tank down slowly and sending it off into a rain garden or across the landscape, kind of a disconnected downspout type of an affair. And they worked very well. We've put hundreds of these in across North Carolina. We have a study currently on mosquitoes, and then also automating the drawdown of these tanks to increase efficiency. So we are looking in to those issues, and we should have that data out here soon within the next year on those studies. So these are some of the considerations. The biggest drawdown, the biggest drawback to these systems is the tank. If you're going to have an above ground tank, is it in view of the neighbors? They like that kind of a thing. Can you hide it? Well, sure. Can you paint it? Absolutely. Maybe you can clad it in some attractive wood, but people object to the agricultural looking tank that's on the side of their house. Now, you can bury these. I've seen people using old septic systems, septic tanks rather. You don't want to use your septic system for this, obviously be overwhelmed, but they will buy a second septic tank and put these in. There are some below ground, below grade tanks you can get. But as far as the maintenance and the system goes, all is the same. Collection system, plumbing, gutters, downspouts, and overflow have to be maintained. And then you can automate it using pumps. Very easy to maintain. We need to overcome the fact that that tank is above ground. And at least with my experience, putting this around back, hiding it with some vegetation works really well. You can see these things can be painted. This is 6,000 gallons of storage at a community garden in Raleigh that we've been working with. Downtown Raleigh is right there. You can see the top of the building. So this is East Raleigh. And these tanks are 3,000 gallons each. To give you an idea, they're about 8 feet in diameter and about 8 feet high. So again, sizable. And these collect water off of a church rooftop. It's about 4,000 square feet of impervious area. That's about 100 yards away. The water is piped underground, and it's using an Australian wet system type of a configuration where the downspouts on the church are up about 20 feet, and the pipe going into this tank is below ground, but comes up next to the tank and goes in about 6 feet above grade. And the difference in that differential drives the water into the tank. So that's called a wet system. If you're interested, you can look that up and how that works. Here are more typical homeowner size systems. So you can see big garden area, lots of water need. Rain barrels, typically 50 to 60 gallons. The tank on the lower right is a 600 gallon tank. And I don't find that unattractive at all. She's got some lilies there. She's hidden that. You can get a climbing vine and support that around these tanks. They can be hidden if you don't like it. A very simple system, comes off the downspout, comes into the filter, and drops right down into the tank. And then an overflow goes to a rain garden. It's just downhill and behind me. So you get the treatment train going. Storage for irrigation, knocks the peak off, and then also treatment as it overflows and goes from the tank and, of course, into the rain garden. This is in Siler City. We actually have a tank over here to the right. And this is a little stage area and a coffee shop area. This is a rain garden here that receives the water from that tank when it overflows, and of course also from the sky. So these can be very, very attractive. This is a public square in Siler City where we installed a practice. This is in Pittsburgh, and you can see how the wet system works. This is the roof collection area. Here's our tank. This is at a church there in Pittsburgh. Here's the tank. And you can see the downspout we cut here at this elevation. It's hard to make out, but there's another filter here at that elevation. Drops down in the ground, underneath, and then pops up next to the tank and goes in. So these two downspouts are connected, flow into the tank. There's the overflow, and it comes out here and goes to our rain garden, which, if Mike Burchell is still on, this has turned into a pocket wetland, Mike. So people were concerned. They were like, mosquitoes, snakes are going to be attracted to this area. No, it's sunny. We have a diversity of plants in there, broad variety of plants, and we've got some local predators. Dragonflies hang out there. The kids like to sit there and watch all that activity. So here we go. We have an example, a perfect demonstration of a small-scale solution that has a capture device, an overflow device, and they use this. You can see the hose hooked up here. They use this to irrigate the landscape. So very, very simple system that you can put in for, if you do it yourself, you do it for maybe $500 or $1,000. That's about $1 per stored gallon. You get somebody to install it, the cost is going to go up maybe 2 or 3 times that because you get somebody to do that. But right now, for the equipment and the materials, you're looking at about $1 to $2 a stored gallon to install these. That is a 550-gallon tank, by the way, if you're interested. So it's about 4 feet, 3.5 feet high, and about 5.5 feet in diameter. And this has been painted recently, so they've dressed this up a little bit. If you're going to do rainwater harvesting, you can't have a gutter that looks like this. clearly. So no water is going to get to your tank. These need to be up to the job. I don't know why they make these out of metal, because hardly anybody cleans their gutters like they should. So you're asking for rust, you're asking for trouble. So again, seamless gutters, aluminum seamless gutters are the way to go, but this is a commercial building. Keep those gutters clean. There's a number of ways to do that. You can see our cistern down here on the left, down low. There's all kinds of little devices that you can use to keep leaves out of there. We put a filter on the end of the pipe that goes to the tank, and that keeps the mosquitoes and everything else out. Lots of tank options. I'm standing on an 1,100-gallon tank. This is in Durham again. Very light. This is a 1/4-inch polyethylene. We like the black tanks, dark green tanks, dark blue, because if you do a translucent tank and you see the whole mess of inventory of these white tanks, you will get algae. You can paint these, but we just get them in dark colors and you won't create an algae farm, which will be a mess. You can get these tanks. You can see maybe in the top here, it's got a filter in the top of the tank. Makes it easy because the filter is the lid, and you just simply lop off your downspout, redirect it into the top of the tank. These are connected at the bottom, and so the water level will rise in both of these at the same rate. And you can have a hose connector here. And you may be wondering, so what is this? What is this? Well, let me back up here. This is our passive drawdown device. There's a little leak down hole right here. So you may be wondering, so why is it at this elevation? This volume in these two tanks, because again, they're connected, this represents the volume of the 1-inch rain off this rooftop. So now we have a capture and a collection and a drawdown device. So this is actually an innovative water harvester. He's got water at the bottom that he can use to irrigate his garden over here. And then when it rains, small leak down hole here. Now it will drain down within 2 or 3 days very slowly into this area, and I'll show you where it's going. And now this is a stormwater treatment device. So it's a small scale, innovative water harvester that you can basically put anywhere on any tank. Some of these tanks you can put, this is in Newbern at Tryon Palace, historic area. They didn't want people to be able to see the tanks. They're not that attractive. They wanted to stay below the elevation of the wall, so you can put these tanks. These are skinny, these are called Fat Boy water wall tanks. So we're collecting water off this roof, and these are right along the foundation, so we can hide these in confined areas. So here is this drawdown that I mentioned. This is after a rainstorm. Valve is open, little small 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch hole in the end of this cap. And he can close this during the summer when he wants to collect more irrigation water. He can open it in the winter when he's not irrigating. And now this is managing runoff from his rooftop to the local creek. Here's where it's flowing. It's going past his little chicken house, past his garden and his impervious area. So when it rains, water from his rooftop used to go shooting down this driveway and into the rain, into the stream down here, rather. Well, now it doesn't do that. So here it is. It's coming down. It infiltrates. So he's getting zero runoff. You can see the tanks up here. So again, this is an innovative water harvester. And this is just small scale. It's only 400 gallons. But you can imagine in larger areas, we have drawdowns like this. The sky's the limit. You can make these as big or as small as you like. But there it is up close, and there's that little hole. To keep that from clogging, there is a filter system that's inside of this tank. We just use a stainless steel mesh screen. Can be easily cleaned. You just pop the lid off and you can clean it. So that is what we call our passive drawdown device. These tanks can be buried. This is at Agri Supply in Garner. We have a total of about 7,000 gallons of storage underground. Again, you're going to double your cost of installation by doing this, but it makes for a nice, clean, below-grade installation. So there it is during construction. And here we're putting 2 tanks in. This is the building where we're collecting the irrigation water. This is going to irrigate some Bermuda grass. There's the finished product. The tanks, you can see the access ports are here. The tanks are under here. This is a 20,000 square foot roof area, of which we have half of the water coming into these tanks, and we irrigate this. Would have been nice to do the whole building, but we ran out of money. Imagine that. So we can add more tanks as we have more funding in the future, but you could just link and daisy chain these together. But we now are collecting water off half of this roof, and the grass is doing great. So can we improve upon the passive drawdown? Again, it's just a hole in the side of a tank at the 1-inch volume elevation. Well, there is a system out there that automates this, and it's linked into the NOAA, into the Doppler radar, into the weather forecasting. And it's a really cool system. There's a company out there called OptiRC, OPTIRC. They have systems, big and small, where you can actually automate this. And it will keep your tank full until the approaching rainstorm is coming. And depending on the intensity of the rainfall that's expected, it will empty your tank automatically. Don't even have to touch it. Or turn on your irrigation system and irrigate your landscape in anticipation of the storm. So here's a Doppler radar composite that it's linked into using a laptop computer. Here are the controllers. Here's the garden that we're irrigating. And here's our drawdown valve. So this whole thing is automated. The system knows if there's a rainstorm coming. The system knows how full the tank is. The system can drain the tank or start the irrigation system, and it knows how much water's in the tank, it knows the roof area, and it knows the garden area. So again, you just set up the parameters and away you go. As long as you have electricity. This one, I think we had hit by lightning at least once. We were out of business. And so we need to replace a few things. They're not cheap. So you can do this manually or you can do it automatic, but this type of thing is out there. It would make sense to do this on a large system. Maybe not a small system like this, but we were testing it. So here's the garden area that we're irrigating at Tryon Palace, and worked great. The types of success we have with this is pretty remarkable. Using this type of system, or even the manual that you saw, the manual system we had on that small tank, we can reduce runoff by over 50%. And if we really, really watch it or automate it and get those parameters nice and tight, we can reduce runoff compared to the roof without this system by up to 95%. It's amazing. It's amazing. So it's working well. It's capturing that water, slowing it down, slowly releasing it, and using that for irrigation or just sending it out into a garden area. Rain gardens, this is just a small bioretention. You see some examples here of what that looks like. Lots of benefits to rain gardens. Again, this group is going to know this. Reduces pollution downstream, increases water infiltration remarkably. Beautiful landscape feature. The people that like rain gardens love plants, just love them. And so if you've got a plant lover, we have our master gardener volunteers to help us to answer kind of the routine types of gardening questions that Extension gets every day, annually. We get somewhere around 20, 30,000 phone calls with people wondering about either runoff, landscape, irrigation, pesticides, all of that. This is a great, attractive alternative for something like that. So this is kind of what one of these looks like. If you're unfamiliar, capturing runoff from parking areas, rooftops, fills up the rain garden. Here we've got some water-loving plants there, and it infiltrates it into the ground, of course. So the difference with a bioretention and, of course, a wetland that Dr. Burchell was talking about earlier is wetlands stay wet. There's always water in those. A bioretention is going to have the types of plants in it that can survive wet feet for 2 to 4 days, and then it dries up. Important to that is, of course, mosquitoes. We don't want to create mosquito habitat because there's a lot of issue or concern with equine encephalitis, West Nile, and so we don't want to create mosquito habitat here. So this is an education challenge too. A lot of people consider these snaky, look kind of unkept sometimes. Mosquito habitat, if you do it right, no. If you keep it maintained, works great, no mosquitoes. So again, as I mentioned before, They don't have to be flowery, wildflower, extremely attractive types of things. This can be a situation where you just protect the natural area and you send all the downspouts, gutters and downspouts from the house adjacent to it over into that area. Works just as well. And this is the example here. So if you like wildflowers, that's fine too. Here's a buffer mix that we used in Carrboro along a rain garden to the left, you'll see. And the kids love this. So do the bees. So we were attracting pollinators. It is a pollinator mix. So we didn't anticipate that maybe some of the teachers would have an issue with pollinators, but it is attractive. So again, it's a challenge sometimes, but it looks a lot better than it did. And again, I mentioned the Silas City rain garden. So the black-eyed Susans, very versatile plant. Love those. Love those. This is in Cary. This is some infill development that's occurring, some redevelopment. It's very attractive in some areas of Cary where you have older 1930s, 40s, 50s homes. And those are being torn down, and we have new construction going up. Of course, that creates a lot of runoff issues. So here we have a sidewalk sided rain garden capturing water off all of these sites, sending them across the landscape and then into this rain garden here at the bottom of the hill. And you see our rushes here. We have a beauty berry over here. And the homeowner here just loves it. It's attractive, and they don't have to mow grass. And I asked them how they maintain this. They go in and pull out dead plants, replant. It takes maybe, he said, probably less than a day a year because they stay on top of it. They do a little bit each weekend or at the change of the seasons, and it's not a big deal at all. This would look nasty if they didn't do anything for about 5 years. But they're out there and they're using it, and they were plant people. And I said, well, a rain garden's for you. This is perfect. And it works out really well. So here are some maybe a little less attractive, but again, they're working fine. This is what it looks like coming off of the house with the downspouts and into our rain garden. This is after a rain event, so you can kind of see how that looks. So this can be mulched. We kind of like that to keep the weeds down. Kind of sparsely planted, but doesn't have to be a showpiece. This is in the back of the house, and it's working great. Working fantastic. This is in in Raleigh. And again, it's a mulched area. It doesn't look flat like it would hold much, but this photograph is deceiving. It actually does a really good job. There's a stormwater drop inlet here that kind of serves as a high water mark. This does have a little too much mulch in it. So again, some people kill these with kindness. And what I mean by that is they see a low area and an untrained landscaper would mulch too much. So we need to train our landscapers on how to recognize a rain garden and how they need to approach maintenance of these. And another important thing is I would have a maintenance contract on these types of practices. And then they would have to come through our training, be a mandatory, again, easy for me to say, mandatory training where they come to our workshops, they learn what these are, how they function, and then they can go out and sell this to the community that they are a certified stormwater control measure maintainer. First job, when people are interested in putting these in, they need to stabilize bare soils first. Any type of area draining to the rain garden, this needs to be stabilized. This is not a place for a rain garden. They're kind of like air filters on cars, motorcycles, other vehicles. They will clog, be ineffective. So we need to stabilize the uphill landscape first. Okay, moving right along. Let's see, how am I doing on time? Okay, I got a few more minutes. Does turf grass do a good job stabilizing stream banks? And again, this is the #1 source of sediment, which is the #1 pollutant in North Carolina, #1 source of sediment in urban areas in North Carolina. This is a typical kind of urban wet weather stream. And in the summer, this dries up, but during the winter, this is January, get a big rainstorm, it flows, and you can see how it's tearing the banks out. Grass does not do a good job because the roots are about 4 inches deep. There's 4 inches right there. You can see what's happening. So what we're suggesting here is not rock. Everybody goes to old school. Let's put in a bunch of riprap here and call it a day. No, what we want to do is maybe regrade these banks back on a little bit of a slope and maybe put some natural erosion control materials here and then put in some live stakes or other deeply rooted perennial. There's an issue there because, you know, here somebody saw a snake. So the answer to that is what I call Roundup gone wild. They've round up these edges clearly, and now you see what's happening. There's nothing to hold that soil, and we get erosion occurring. And look at that soil in that water. It's like chocolate milk. So we need to avoid this. The difficulty is convincing people that having vegetation, woody vegetation next to streams is a good thing. Because again, somebody saw a snake, and if you see water and a bunch of a woody thicket, that's what people go to. And if it's a park, people don't like to see that. And also, when people buy houses, they like to see the stream. They like to see the water. So if we load it up with vegetation, it's going to stabilize the stream. That's counter to why they bought the property sometimes. So we have a little bit of education going on. I call this picture the tale of two stream banks. Look on the right and how stable that is. Woody vegetation, lots of roots, mature, got some ground cover. Look on the left. This is an issue. People climbing up and down the banks, kids wading in the stream, ducks, geese, other dogs, activity. So we need to make the left look like the right somehow. But again, it's a county park, so that's the issue. You know, I bought this house to see the stream. And you can see what's going on with some of our residential sites here. Grass will not hold that bank. You get a big storm like we had a couple weeks ago. There were some areas that got 6 inches of rain. And look what's happening there. The only way to really address this would be to have some deep-rooted perennial plants along that. And you can see on the right-hand side of the right picture, we have a kind of a mature wooded area. Look where the erosion is occurring. So we need a change in mentality about how these streams are supposed to look. Second issue is fear of critters. This homeowner has approached this like a lot of homeowners. I don't know why they put the blocks there. They're not doing a thing in terms of stabilizing the stream bank. The good news here is we have roots, lots of roots. That's a lot better than the last picture. Not a lot of root there, but look at that. So we've got a fighting chance here, and maybe we can use a technique that I'll get into in a minute called live staking, where we can put woody material that will root and grow from cuttings, kind of stab those right into the bank, and they will grow and hopefully flourish right along that bank area. So that's a live staking technique. And you can do that. You can do that. A lot of people think, I'm just going to load that up with rock. Well, you can't do that. They're not going to, the Army Corps is not going to allow that, and it's just going to look ugly. So again, our focus is on small scale solutions with native plants. So do streams move? Absolutely. We've been doing trainings with realtors and also homeowner groups. And if you're buying the house on the stream that everybody just loves, keep in mind that that stream may not stay where it is. They do move. It's a natural system. And this person, it's carving out that bank because the stream has moved over 10 feet after a big storm. So trying to figure out how we can stabilize this. This is interesting. So in making the case for stream bank repair, a group of us walked about 50 miles of streams in Morrisville and Wake Forest areas. And we rated the streams as poor, good, and you know, whether it needs work or whether it doesn't. What we found out was about 10% of those streams, 10% of the 50 miles of streams, basically critically unstable, threatening structures, threatening backyards, maybe sewer or stormwater infrastructure. Most homeowners, and again, these houses were probably a pretty wealthy area. 250,000 at the bottom, maybe 2 million at the very top. Average value was probably somewhere around $500,000, $600,000. Most homeowners were oblivious to some of the issues out there. And also realtors, and I've told realtors this, if we have any realtors in the crowd, I don't mean any disrespect, but there's this air of plausible deniability where they want to make the sale and they don't really know enough to maybe mention that this could be an issue. They certainly don't want to kill that sale. So there's this air of plausible deniability with this. And often the problem gets worse instead of getting better. So, you know, a stitch in time with these small streams is a good thing. So, for example, if 100 homes were affected by an unstable stream in the backyard and the average value of that home was $500,000, the realtors were telling us after we asked them, if we had an unstable stream in the backyard, how would that impact the value of the place? We basically arrived at 10 to 15% value loss of that property. So if we had 100 homes valued at $500,000, a 10% impact, that's a $5 million value reduction because of stream bank instability. And believe me, if you have a stable stream bank in the backyard, that is an amenity. People love that. People recognize that, and they'll sell that. If you have, and the other side of that coin, of course, is if you have an unstable stream bank, it's going to hurt your value and your resale ability. So we have riparian buffer protection programs. Won't get into that. We need to be aware of those. We're educating people on that. There's the issue of who owns water and waters of the state. North Carolina is a riparian state, so it's connected with the land. However, many people are surprised that they can't get in the stream and work without a permit. So we're trying to educate them on that as well. Our projects in stream bank repair versus restoration, our projects, we want to do stream bank repair where we don't necessarily need a permit to do the work. We work above ordinary high water. We put in natural materials and native plants, and we try to cure erosion issues without having to go into the permitting and the cost of developing those plans, of course. Sometimes we do get involved in those restoration plans, but they're going to be a lot more, of course. We're really focusing on riparian buffer management and try to keep people out of trouble. This is in Cary. Somebody saw a snake, and they cleaned out the underbrush. And you can see that now this is a potential erosion issue because they cleaned out all this underbrush. So those trees need to be put back. And there are fines for doing this type of work, significant fines for tearing up riparian buffers. And the state, of course, has a riparian buffer protection program. You can go on this site, excuse me, and look up the particular issues and recommendations with that. Floodplain mapping program, the state's involved in as well because these change. We do a stream bank repair workshop. We're getting these rolling again. We plan to do 3 here this winter, maybe from December through March of next year. So check back on that. But that is our stream bank repair workshop website. And we have a small scale solutions to eroding stream banks manual that we use as basically the manual for our stream bank workshops. So I have the link down at the bottom, pretty long, but if you go into your search engine and you just enter NCSU for North Carolina State University, small scale solutions to eroding stream banks, Dr. Burchell, myself, other colleagues, we've been working with this over the years, includes plant references, live stake references that I don't have the time to go into in much detail today, and you can look this up. And so that's a pretty good reference manual. Give you some examples. Here's Wake Forest, had 160 feet of stream, about a 5-foot bank that was eroding here. So there it is a close-up, big impervious area uphill from this guy. It was fine until the impervious area went in. It was a large parking lot and a rooftop, and this started degrading his property. So here's our coir, tools of the trade, sledgehammers, and 2x2 wood stakes. So we started with some coir at the bottom. This was permitted. So we got Army Corps out there. We put our coir at the bottom, and then we raked this. We seeded it. We strawed it. We put some lime and some fertilizer down to get the pH and the fertility up, and we raked that out. And then we put our matting in with some of these eco stakes. These all degrade within 5 years, 5 to 7 years. And so we seeded it. We matted it on the outside bend, because you can see, look at the vegetation over here. Looks pretty good. On this side, we need to create that and stabilize that. You can see how close to home is to this. So it's a, one of the suggestions was, well, you know, we don't need to have a house here. It's in the floodway. Well, that wasn't going to change. So we worked with it as well as we could. So there we are, putting on our rolls of coir. And there it is after 6 weeks. And typical installation cost is about $15 to $20 a linear foot. And this was about 100, 150 linear feet, I recall. So you can figure out how much that cost. And he did all the work himself, the homeowner and his daughter. So looks good. We came in the next fall and we put in live stakes here. So right now it's kind of a thicket in there. And that's holding a lot better. Again, that's grass, that's temporary. We put in live stakes. The matting is basically coir. Oh, wrong way. Here's live stakes. You can kind of see them here. Silky dogwood, elderberry, 9-bark, silky willow. These are all in the manual that I mentioned and gave you the link for. Basically a 1/2 inch in diameter, and we put those in the ground about, if we have a 3-foot stake, we put it in the ground about 2 feet, and then that sprouts and turns into a new native woody shrub. Prolific rooters, that's what we look for prolific rooters. So here we are storing them in the stream before installation and putting them in the bank. We start at water level and then move up the bank. And you can cut these yourself. If you can identify plants, you can get these online, 50 to 70 cents a piece, and they have about a 3-foot spacing. So you can do a lot of bank fairly cheaply. Here's what they look like when they are mature. It's about a 6x6 shrub. And as they get established, you can come in here and cut about half of that out and then restake another area. So you've got a sustainable type of a system. So that's what they look like. In the winter and the summer, of course, it's a leafy woody shrub. And we hold these workshops along these stream banks, hands-on, all hands on deck there. And this is one of our more popular workshops. So we're going to continue that. Here's Apex, kind of a homemade solution here. And this is after 1 year. So we stabilize that. And some of this work can be done without permitting, as long as you do it above ordinary high water. So we always recommend people to get Army Corps out there and check it out, have us come take a look at it, and look the way that we can stabilize these. I mentioned our BMP inspection and maintenance workshop. I'll end on this. This is one of our more popular workshops. These are going to get going here. We have one, I think, in the next couple of weeks. In Raleigh, we want to continue some more of these as we go into the future here. And COVID has kind of put a damper on these, but we're getting the green light to start this up again. So there's our rain garden. Thank you so much. Yes. So I'll end on that.
Thank you so much, Mitch. That was really excellent. Lots of great information about small scale solutions and thinking about different ways to intervene in our systems. We're just about out of time, but there are 2 questions that came in, and I'm wondering if you could just maybe touch on both of them quickly
sure.
As a way to wrap up. And one was, what would be the best way to add in a downspout rain garden on a steep slope? We have a number of folks coming in from Western North, from
sure.
further west, and that's one. And the other one is, can you plant edible plants like herbs and veggies in a rain garden, or is that not recommended because of pollutants that can be found in runoff?
Well, I'll take the second one first. As far as edibles, I know some people that have done that. The problem with edibles is, so many of our vegetables and other plants don't like wet feet. And this is going to be a situation where you're going to have a plant that is, could be inundated for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And so that is an issue there. If you can find an edible that likes wet feet like that, pollution coming off of a rooftop is negligible. There's some studies out, it's very small amounts. Even off asphalt shingles, you'll get some zinc off galvanized rooftops. But again, it's in such small amounts that that's not really an issue with edible plants. I think that's a cool idea. I have not seen a successful edible rain garden yet. But stay in contact with me. Let me know if you're successful at that. But that's the challenge. Edible plants and wet feet, that's going to be the difficulty because it's going to be boggy. It's going to be wet. It's going to be boggy, especially this year when it's been so wet. As far as building rain gardens on steep slopes, if it's really steep, so without belaboring this, you need the rain garden to be about 10% of the size of the roof area or driveway area draining to it. So if you have 1,000 square foot driveway or rooftop draining that you want to control runoff, your rain garden's got to be 10% of that. So that's about 100 square feet, right? So on a steep slope, you're going to have to dig into the bank because see, you want the bottom flat, right? You want the bottom flat so you can increase the amount of infiltration area in the soil. The problem is on a steep slope, it's hard to get that without digging back into the bank, which is an option, but you're going to have that steep slope there, right? If you dig into the bank. So what you might do is, why not do kind of a diversion where you can have a long, thin type of a swale that goes across slope, turns at the end of the property and goes across the slope again, and then turns again. That's an alternative. And you'll see this, kind of these steep slope diversions. So again, you're increasing the contact time of the runoff with the soil, and it's going to infiltrate. Another thing you could do is, I've seen steep slope rain gardens where you have one, and then another below it, and then another. And these are built like scales of a fish, where the water would flow down and go to the first rain garden, overflow to the second, overflow to the third, overflow to the fourth if you needed it. It increases the complexity, but you want all 4 or 3 or 2, however many you decide to build, of those rain garden bottoms to be at that 100 square feet or that 10% of the area draining to it. So as long as you can get that, that's fine. But I do like the diversion where you can just kind of twist that, and you can have grass there. I mean, that works fine. It'll infiltrate the soil or infiltrate the water into the soil and slow it down. So.
Well, thank you so much once again. There's a
Sure.
big round of applause. The crowd is again going wild.